Good evening, everyone. This is Pradeep, Ambassador of Change from GETI, the Global Education and Training Institute, Lucknow. We are the premier training institute for training principals and teachers in all of India. And we have many in service and pre-service programs. And for more information, please go to 7408401000. Right now, you're on a disruptive education platform. On this platform, we have met with and interacted with more than 1,450 educators from India and all over the world. And this evening, we have for you Dr. S. Sobana, Associate Professor of English from the Bishop Heber College, Tiruchirappalli, Tamil Nadu. Uh, she will tell you more about herself. So over to you, ma'am. Please introduce yourself and thank you so much for being with us. Subhana, ma'am, yeah. Carry on, ma'am. Subhana, ma'am, please carry on.
I don't hear you properly. Your volume seems to be very low for me.
Yeah, ma'am, please
I've
carry on.
adjusted my device.
Please carry on, ma'am. You're on.
So do you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you. Please carry on.
Yes. Can I start?
Yeah. She will be speaking to us today on motivation in an ESL classroom. Carry on, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Being a teacher of English language, I had taught at school too, and I've been teaching in the college, Bishop Heber College, Tiruchirappalli, for over 25 years now. My concern is all about the lack of motivation in a classroom where English is generally the second language. Lack of motivation, it's because of the chief reason that they're not trained to listen and they're not trained to think. They're not given space for thinking on their own. Rather, they are made to memorize and regurgitate, vomit what they've memorized because it's a foreign language. Funny, this looks, it's because though the language is foreign, we had used this language for years together when the Britishers were here, and we had used it as an official and not so official language. And so to a great extent, we have got used to this language. So language, as you and I will endorse, is only a medium of expression of our feelings, of our thinking. And so I kept wondering why English should in any way stand in the way of expressing oneself, of one's feelings and thoughts. But it has been like that because of bad schooling system. The system, the management sometimes, I mean the school management and the college management, sometimes which go without supervision. Nobody goes around to supervise what happens in the classroom. They're happy as long as the teacher is there in the class, but they don't care what really goes on in the classroom. Is something that I express another concern. So the leaders of an institution, if they will go around to see how much an interaction happens in a classroom where English is taught or English is spoken, whatever be the subject, commerce or zoology or botany or history or geography, whatever be the subject, where English is spoken, wherever English is spoken, both the teachers who interact in the class and those who are at the supervisory cadre, they're supposed to make sure that a very lively interaction happens in a class, and that is what is largely missing these days. The teachers are generally seen as people who dish out material in the class, not caring to know if the students enjoy what they are being spoken to in English, but they only know that they expect them to talk in the vernacular. This part of India, it's Tamil. This should be the case everywhere. I'm not talking about just the English literature classrooms or English language classrooms. I'm talking about every classroom where English is spoken to deliver the matter with regard to that subject which is being discussed. Discussed is a word that I prefer to teach. So anything that you bring into a class as a teacher, you're supposed to discuss and deliberate, meaning you wait for the students to interact with you. You wait for the students to give you info because they are the ones who know the updates on a particular field, on a particular topic, in a particular field. And so the teachers, how experienced they are, how qualified they are, however old they are, they're supposed to wait for the youngsters to interact with them in their own way, in the sense, from their own perspective, from their own experience of life. Their experience is largely gathered from their interactions with their friends, their family members, their cousins, interactions in the social media, but they're interacting in a very lively manner. Though they are just chatting sometimes, they know the updates on simply, generally, concerns of life. The same way with every one of the fields of activity or study. And so, teachers must give them space to interact. To listen means to listen critically. This is what's supposed to happen in a classroom where, or in a deliberation where, English is used as a medium, is what I would try to bring into this discussion. ESL means English as a second language classroom. Doesn't have to mean an English teaching classroom or English language teaching classroom. It can mean any subject teaching classroom where English is the medium. Well, the importance of listening critically, thinking critically, and interaction, for which the teachers have to give room, make room for the youngsters, is a very important question of personality. Listening is one great side to a particular person's self-esteem and personality. When there is no listening, when someone is spoken to, or when someone is part of a big audience and is listening as part of a big audience, then it means there is no personality, there is no sense of self-esteem, is my humble opinion. I think those of you listening here now will agree to it or not agree to it. You're most welcome to raise questions at the end of the talk. These days, it's because of the quick money and quick success, which mark studentship, which mark education at the school level and at the college level. Listening critically, thinking critically, interaction, and all these are simply wafted to the wind and nobody cares about it. My discussion points fingers at people who are responsible for teaching a subject, people responsible for planning in the institutions, as much as people who are students, youngsters, who are caught up in a kind of a quagmire called educational system in India today. And they don't know how to get out of it. It's because it's become a habit with all the three to run after money which is quickly made and success which is quickly made. Quick, we know, is synonymous with shortcuts. And there can never be a shortcut to education, is my humble opinion too. Well, you all know that a child begins to learn by ear catching, and that is why they always say, the experts of language study, they say, it's in this order: listening, speaking, reading, and writing, LSRW, that a language is learned. But nobody cares about it. Just look into a school where a vernacular is taught, a school where, in the same school where English is taught. The English teacher just imitates the vernacular teaching teacher. Vernacular teacher, maybe Hindi or Telugu or Marathi or Tamil teacher, extracts writing exercises from the students, which of course is a child violence. It's because a child until up to the age of 8 cannot exercise a good coordination between the brain and the limbs, not to speak of the thinking ability. But it's atrocious on the part of the vernacular teacher to do that, to make the students to write. Just because a student is known to speak that mother tongue at home, and just because the children have learned to listen to the mother tongue and understand, the teacher cannot come to a quick decision that the children can be made to write. More worse, the teachers of English in such schools or in the so-called English medium schools, they make the students to begin to write in English right from age 3, which again, I would call even a more worse problem, more worse violence against children. And so one must know, as a common sense, that until the child is about 8 years, nobody can, including the teacher, exact the children to begin to write anything. So that's something one must learn. And so it all begins, the study of a language, an expertise with a language, all begins with listening. And listening critically is the next stage. But you must understand, very interesting, that even at a very young age of 3 or 4, until the students are, the child students are made to connect what they listen to with an object. The teacher shows an apple and says, this is an apple. There is a connection, association made. The teacher shows a picture of a person running and says, here you see an Anna running, a person running, a boy running, and this is running, this is eating, this is swimming. Verbs or nouns, there is always an association built with the help of a live thing that's happening, or an object, or a picture, or a video. See, this kind of a support a child needs to be able to understand. It's because a child understands a bit of language, be it a word or a sentence, be it a noun or a verb, as a structure. It builds a structure, it builds an association. It's through association it understands a bit of language. This is something any of us as a parent or a teacher must know. And so the basics of how a child begins to listen points to the fact that the child already is listening critically, even though not much of a thinking process begin for the child. But the child associates and listens, means the child associates and is convinced only this object is referred to as this word, and it's convinced that this is how this word has to be used. And so you understand that the critical listening and the critical understanding begins right when the child is very young. And so you can know how critical listening is so much important for a child to begin to be terribly motivated about using the language, language use, right from age 3. Well, who is the listener and who the speaker in a classroom? Are only the students listeners and the teachers speakers? No, never. There should always be an interactive, two-way listening that should happen in a classroom. Hardly anyone is a good listener, even among the adults. Being more interested in what they're going to say next. So, anybody who speaks, including me for that matter, now at this time of my talking to you, now I am too interested in only talking to you. I'm not interested in listening to what you might think now. Thanks ironically to the online mode of presentations these days. So one is only avid about, very enthusiastic about, too eager to speak. It's because we always feel that we are called to dish out material to a group of people, and the group of people are required to take in whatever has been dished out. And that's not how things have to be. There must always be a space for those who listen to interact, to give back to the speaker what they've listened to in their own terms, from their own contexts, from their own experience contexts. And so, as students of language and literature, we must understand that it's a two-way process. As students of, or as listeners of anything on any subject under the sun, it's always a two-way process. Rarely anybody understands this. Rarely anybody agrees to it. And basically, as speakers, we are colonial. And so I am only sharing with you the experience that I've gleaned in my long experience of teaching both youngsters at the college level and children at the school level. And so you're free to interact with me at the end of the talk and share your experience and add to what I've told you already, and enhance the sensitization about the non-colonial way of talking, anybody for that matter. It's always sharing of resources that's meant to be a deliberation that's welcome. In any forum or in any classroom, in a simple school classroom for that matter. Simple because you are interacting there with very young students that's their they are children and who have not had enough experience of life, who may not want to interact about life. It's because they've not had the experience, and still from their minimal experience of life they would come out with their own way of reacting to life, which would be a world of new experience for the adults. And so even a school classroom would be very entertaining, very enterprising for an adult teacher, if only the teacher would mean to give space and room for students to talk. Well, all of us, teachers, lawyers, all of us in our own capacities these days, entrepreneurs, salesmen, all of us enjoy the gift of gab. And so we feel that we have to keep on talking, talking, and talking. But that should not be the case. Well, the question is whether the topic that we talk makes us to talk further, that gives the motivation, or the language that we know that gives us the motivation. It's because that looks to be a very predominant question in especially a classroom where you get to see students who are basically from vernacular medium schools at the college level, and who are basically children from homes where they use vernaculars in their own respective contexts, various mother tongues to converse. And it's only in a classroom, it's only in a formal forum. They use what is called as English, an ideal ESL classroom. Now, what happens to be the motivation there in a classroom? I would like to limit my talk to the classroom experience. Is it the content or is it the expression? Robert Lado, a linguist, says it's always the content. It's always the content. What you speak matters for somebody to be motivated to speak further on it, for somebody to be motivated to interact with you. Now, what you speak matters. When you go to address a set of students over about 10 years, you must talk something very interesting to a 10-year-old, maybe about drones these days, maybe about masks, maybe about things that are very interesting and trending. 10-year-old who've just begun to look around and look at the world and experience the world and the relationships. Now, whatever you think that would interest a 10-year-old, will that be a kind of a motivation, the topics that you choose? Or the language will be kind of a motivation? So how you proceed with the class matters a lot. And Lado says from a very English-speaking context, I think that it's always the content that matters. But he means to say that to ESL students. What he means to say is, generally students, even a 10-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, is gifted with the capacity to think critically. This nobody understands. This nobody has realized. This even the teachers don't much realize. It's because they have not experimented with the students much to know if the students possess this critical ability. I just have told you how even a 3-year-old has to have a confirmation about calling something, some object, by its destined name, like apple, unless until it's confirmed, the student is confirmed, the child is confirmed that only this particular object is to be called an apple, the child doesn't feel like doing it. Because human mind is a processing unit which processes only structures, not words. It processes structures in the form of associations like this, or in the form of graphic structures like syllables, or in the form of phonemic structures like, again, syllables, phonemic syllable groups. And so the way the mind is biologically designed, the way the children or the adult students learn the language. And so all of us, irrespective of the fact whether we belong to an English speaking community or we don't belong to that, we need to know that we are capable of critical thinking. This has to be motivated in class by simply understanding that a very interesting content, meaning a very relevant content, relevant to a particular age group's level, can always make the students begin to speak in a language that you want them to speak. They will begin to speak in a language that you want them to speak, here in this context, English. And they will begin to look for more and more words, and they will begin to search for new and newer words, exactly where as teachers you can help. Is I would like to end my talk here, wanting to know what you think about what I've just spoken. Can I take questions?
Yes, ma'am. Have you finished, ma'am?
I don't hear you, sir. Still.
Can you hear me, ma'am? Have you finished?
Can I take questions from the audience? Possible?
Yeah, ma'am. Hello. Ma'am, what exactly is an ESL classroom?
I'm sorry, I don't hear you. I
What
don't know
exactly
why.
what exactly is an ESL classroom?
Can I take the questions in the chat box? You're not audible much.
Okay, I'll just do
Very
it.
feeble. Your voice is very feeble. Hope my voice is good, of good volume.
Yeah, you're okay, you're okay.
I'm sorry about this.
No problem.
My phone is in the maximum value, volume, but I don't get the audio. Pretty sorry about it.
I put the question on, ma'am. Have a look at it. What is an ESL classroom? It's in the chat box, ma'am. Okay, I think we're having some problems there. So I request you to watch our detox. And before we leave, the Disruptive Literacy Movement by Global Classroom and Global Dream, which is an initiative by Dr. Sunita Gandhi since 2014. And the idea is to ensure everyone's participation by a people's movement in ensuring basic literacy and numeracy for all our brothers and sisters, where each one of us should be ensuring that we teach one at least, if not more. We have several talks on this every day. And for more information on this, please go to 740-840-1000 for the talks that you would like to listen to. Good evening, everybody. Goodbye, and see you again tomorrow. Thank you, Dr. Sobana. Unfortunately, you're not being really able to listen to us. But thank you so much for your talk, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.